What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one, I'm going to be going over everything that I think you guys need to know, either heading into your fantasy football drafts that are maybe happening on Labor Day Monday or Tuesday, or just sort of going into your general the start of the season. So this will sort of be in the same vein of what I've been doing. I've been going over each of the preseason games before. Obviously, we didn't have any preseason games this week, so most of the updates I'm giving you guys here are going to be injury related. I'm just sort of covering impact players that are injured and how that's going to impact fantasy assets going forward and what we should expect from these guys. So just sort of want to make sure you guys are all up to date as possible and help you guys, go into the start of your season or go into your last drafts with as much information as possible. So yeah, really useful for me to do this. Really helps keep me accountable, helps make sure that I'm up to date as well, and really just want to sort of summarize everything for you guys and make sure that you guys are up to date with everything as well. So yeah, with that, let's just get into the first player here. So starting us off with the big one, we've got Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor was not traded by the self-imposed deadline from the Colts of Tuesday last week, and on top of that, he remains on the PUP, which means that at a minimum, Jonathan Taylor is going to miss at least 4 games into the regular season. That is whether he is traded or not. Even if the Colts managed to trade him to a team like the Dolphins would still have to keep him on the PUP for those first 4 weeks. That's sort of impactful given that the Dolphins just put Jeff Wilson on IR for the first 4 weeks of the season as well, but I'll touch on that later. I personally would be drafting Jonathan Taylor in around 6 or 7 at that point. I think he pretty much falls into that dead zone of running backs. I'd have guys like Alexander Mattison, J.K. Dobbins, James Conner, all ranked really similarly. Obviously, the upside is a little bit higher with Jonathan Taylor, but he ranked as like a low-end running back 2 last season in points per game. He really wasn't himself, and this offense is one that I wasn't super excited about anyway, so there's just way too much risk surrounding him now. I don't find myself taking Jonathan Taylor really at all. I generally just let someone else deal with that. And on top of that, I really don't think there's going to be any value in Indianapolis at the running back position with any of the backups. You've got guys like Deion Jackson, who does profile to get most of the first and second down work in week 1, especially if Zach Moss can't return in week 1. But I don't see a world where you're like excited about starting Deion Jackson in week 1. On top of that, come week 2, and even maybe week 1, I would expect Zach Moss to return from his broken arm. That's going to be a pretty muddy first and second down situation. Those two guys are probably going to split snaps there. And then on top of that, Evan Hull, their 5th round draft pick, their rookie running back, probably going to command most of the passing down work as well. So it's just going to be like a really gross 3 running back backfield in an offense that I don't expect to put up very many fantasy points from the running back position. So unless they were to like sign a guy like Kareem Hunt off the street that we would then expect to get the full allotment of snaps in the offense, I just wouldn't really expect any value out of the Colts running backs right now. I don't think it's really worth really rostering any of the 3. Maybe if you want to take a shot on one of them, you can if you're in a deeper league and roster them. But in general, I wouldn't really target any of the backups. And Jonathan Taylor is just like a middle round dart throw if you're comfortable taking that much risk. Next up, we got another big one. That's going to be Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp suffered a setback with his hamstring injury and is now considered day-to-day per the head coach Sean McVay. Honestly, I think day-to-day is being way too optimistic. I think week-to-week is probably a more realistic way to outline it. The Rams have stated very clearly that they want to take a different approach than him returning to play. They want to take the return to peak performance approach here, and that means that really they're just going to take it easy with Cooper Kupp. They're going to give him as much time as possible as he needs to get back to 100%, and that's extremely concerning because I worry that we could see something similar to what we saw with Keenan Allen last year. With Keenan Allen, we saw him wait 6-7 weeks before coming back from a hamstring injury and then re-aggravating it and missing like another month. That's really scary, just given that you're spending a top 2 round pick in general on Cooper Kupp, or generally he was a top 5 pick up until this hamstring injury happened. So I personally would not pick Cooper Kupp ahead of any of like the top 15 wide receivers right now. Once you get past the Olave, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Calvin Ridley tier, I would consider him. So I consider him really similarly to a guy like Keenan Allen or a guy like Amari Cooper right now. In that range is where I would start considering taking Cooper Kupp, but even that's just really risky, and obviously you just want to, assess how much risk you want to take in your fantasy draft and understand that there are pros and cons associated with it. Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee, while Cooper Kupp are out, I would expect to get a slight bump in target share. Tyler Higbee would be the guy that I would actually expect to lead the team in targets while Cooper Kupp is out, and then Van Jefferson should just see a cut, like an extra target or 2 a week. Nothing significant out of those guys. I think Tyler Higbee could be a guy that you pick up or draft really late in your draft and just stream week 1 at the tight end position. He's totally fine. And in deeper leagues, Van Jefferson could be a flex play for you guys, but I'd probably just want to see how this offense looks before I trust Van Jefferson in my lineup. So in general, I would sort of expect Cooper Kupp to miss, 3-4 weeks to start the season. After that, I would hope he's back up to full playing time, full snaps, full performance, but obviously there'll still be some of that re-injury risk associated with an aging player who's got 2 hamstring injuries this season already. So a lot of risk associated with that. I don't really find myself very comfortably drafting Cooper Kupp very much, but again, if you want to take that high-risk player, I think you could definitely do it. The other thing I would say is I would not recommend drafting both Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor. That's just too much risk for me on one roster. I think you want to sort of pick one, whichever value you want there, and then you could take one of them, but I wouldn't recommend that you do both of those guys this season. Next up, we've got a slightly lesser known name, but still a pretty big deal from a fantasy standpoint. We've got Jeff Wilson Jr., who was placed on IR by the Miami Dolphins earlier this week, and that means he's going to miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. Their head coach, Mike McDaniel, came out and said he wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Wilson came back at some point this season. That's not exactly what you want to hear if you were drafting Jeff Wilson. I had a team that I went pretty running back light on and took Jeff Wilson at the end of the draft. Raheem Mostert was already gone. I would have preferred Mostert anyway, but now that's not really an option. Mostert's probably in line to get a ton of snaps over the first 4 weeks, and that makes him a really great zero RB target if you want to really just wait on your running back spots, sort of buy yourself a couple weeks at the running back position. I think Raheem Mostert could be a guy that's going to put up meaningful running back 2 numbers for the first month of the season. Devon Achane is now in strong consideration for me as a late round draft pick. He's a guy that I do really like the talent of. He's their 3rd round rookie. Profiles to be like their pass catching running back, a guy that they want to get out in open space. I think he could be like everything that they really wanted Chase Edmonds to be last season when they signed Edmonds. So I like Devon Achane. He is already dealing with an injury himself. It sounds like he's healing up enough that he should be able to play week 1, but his body type is so small that I don't really expect him to ever get a full allotment of snaps. I think you'd be hoping for 10 to 15 touches at best. So Devon Achane could maybe play his way into being like a low-end running back 2, a high-end flex play if he ends up getting enough pass-catching volume, but I'd be a little concerned about it. I think he's a guy that you should be rostering, but I wouldn't expect too much out of, especially early on in the season. On top of that, just given how injury-prone this Dolphins running back room is, we've got Jeff Wilson already on IR. Raheem Mostert's 31 and has dealt with injuries throughout his entire career. Devon Achane is an undersized running back who's already been injured in his rookie season. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Miami Dolphins add another running back. They could sign a guy like Kareem Hunt or Leonard Fournette. If they did that, that would absolutely just blow up the backfield. I wouldn't really trust anybody. And if they would end up trading for Jonathan Taylor, which I still think is a possibility at some point over the course of the season, then obviously Jonathan Taylor would be the guy that you want to roster in this backfield. Next up, we've got a pretty quick hitter here in Treylin Burks. He's returned to practice, and all signs point towards him being available to play week 1. Obviously, he suffered that LCL strain a few weeks back, and a lot of people were concerned that it could cost him the first few weeks of the season. It looks more and more like he should be ready to go week 1. That sort of makes me a little bit less excited about Chigoziem Okonkwo, or Chigo Okonkwo for short, the Titans tight end. It makes me a little bit less excited about DeAndre Hopkins as well. Hopkins is still the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Burks and Okonkwo are like low-end starting options if you really need to, but I'd probably only be starting DeAndre Hopkins out of this Titans offense week 1, wanting to see how things play out. I do still think that Treylin Burks can be meaningful in fantasy this season. I think, if the Titans do pass a little bit more than they did in the past, we could see a scenario where, maybe we have like another A.J. Brown, Corey Davis season with Treylin Burks and DeAndre Hopkins, so it is possible that these guys still put up value. I think Treylin Burks is a good 10th to 12th round target. He's a guy that I do believe in the talent of quite a bit. I think he's a really good player, and obviously there's still a chance he could surpass DeAndre Hopkins as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Hopkins is obviously getting up there in age. It's possible he takes a step back and Treylin Burks could pass him. So Burks is still a totally fine draft pick. He's just, keep in mind that he's probably going to be not 100% week 1, and then you should be really hoping that he can sort of take a step forward over the first few weeks of the season. Next here, we've got Kadarius Toney. Andy Reid stated earlier this week that Kadarius Toney could be able to suit up for week 1, and honestly, it sounds more and more like he's going to be able to do that on Thursday night, which, by the way, that's super exciting. We've got football on Thursday. That's 3 days away, so super excited for that. Obviously, you're not going to start Kadarius Toney in week 1, but it's just really promising to see that he's recovered from this offseason injury. I think he could still be a guy that flashes at some point during the course of the season, although I don't really see a world where he pans out in terms of being like a reliable weekly starter, just with how injury-prone he is and how much I think he's going to be more utilized as like a gadget player. Never really see a full allotment of snaps. But with him active, it does make me sort of just not want to play any Chiefs wide receivers in week 1. It just further muddies the waters out of which one of these wide receivers is actually going to be the one that you want to start. If you do want to start one, I think you can start Sky Moore, but it's a little bit scary. It should be a high-scoring game in week 1 between them and the Lions, so there is some reason for optimism there, but just keep in mind that I think it could be a really muddy situation, and you might sort of want to see how that plays out before you throw any of these guys into your starting lineup. Next up, we've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. JSN was able to avoid the PUP list, which is super promising, and he returned to practice already with a cast on his wrist. Obviously, him practicing is not necessarily an indictment that he's fully healthy. He's got that cast on his wrist. He's not going to be able to catch passes until that comes off, but I really don't expect him to play in week 1, obviously, although him avoiding the PUP is fantastic. It does mean that we're not really going to see that worst-case scenario that a lot of people were worried about in terms of the Seahawks having their week 5 bye, potentially letting JSN sit out the first 4 weeks and letting him come back week 6. I think that's out of the cards. I think JSN probably misses 1 or 2 games and then comes back and is ready to roll. I still think he should be drafted in the 7th or 8th round right now, right around where Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers are. I have them all ranked very similarly, but At this point, I don't think you're going to be really drafting him to count on him early on in the season, but you probably weren't doing that anyway. You weren't drafting him to start for you week one, so I don't really think his draft capital should be too much lower than what it was before this injury. He can still clearly have an elite second half of the season. He's going to be a really good player in the NFL, and I do like the talent quite a bit. So JSN's a guy that I'm more optimistic on now. He's not going to see that worst case scenario from an injury standpoint, and he's a guy that I think you can still confidently draft in the middle rounds of your draft right now. Next up, we've got Kendra Miller, the rookie running back for New Orleans, and he's been banged up throughout the course of training camp already, and he additionally strained his hamstring at practice on August 31st. This should cost him some time early on in the season. At this point, I wouldn't really expect him to be ready for week one, and honestly, that might take him off of draft boards for me. One of the main reasons for optimism with Kendra Miller was that he was going to get a real opportunity to put meaningful tape on the field in the first 3 weeks of the season. With Alvin Kamara being suspended at this point, I think it's going to be pretty much just Jamal Williams for the first 3 weeks, and that makes him not a very enticing option. It does make Jamal Williams, though, a really enticing zero running back option if you do want to just sort of wait on your running back position for a long time and then draft Jamal Williams and Raheem Mostert in like rounds 10 and 11. I think that's a really good approach right now. You could probably build a really quality starting lineup doing that. Both those guys are going to put up like running back 2 numbers for the first couple of weeks of the season, and I think that's going to give you a really safe floor, and obviously it'll buy you a month basically to sort of figure out what you want to do at your running back spots. So I like Jamal Williams quite a bit now, a little bit more. I think he brought him as like a 9th round grade, and Kendra Miller is a guy that I'm just drafting in like really deep leagues, not counting on. He's just a bench stash for me now. Next up, we've got Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was placed in the PUP, which means he's going to miss at least the first 4 games of the season. Something that I think is important to note is that Kyler Murray would be owed almost $100 million over the following 3 years by the Arizona Cardinals if he's unable to pass a physical before March. This is a similar contract situation to why the Las Vegas Raiders sat Derek Carr over the final weeks of the season last year. There was a lot of guaranteed money for injury in his contract, so they didn't want to risk injury there. And I think we could potentially see a similar situation pop up here with Kyler Murray. This highly suggests that the Cardinals might be incentivized just to let Kyler Murray take the whole season off. That way that they can take a quarterback at number 1, think about like Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick next year, and they can move off with Kyler Murray, let him be fully healthy, and trade him to somebody that'll actually take on his contract. With that being said, I still think that Marquise Brown and James Conner can be meaningful fantasy contributors here, but I think it does lower their ceilings a little bit, and on top of that, I think it probably takes guys like Michael Wilson out of real consideration for having a quality season. It's still possible. I like Michael Wilson's talent. I like Rondale Moore a bit as well in PPR formats. So both those guys are okay draft picks, but I just wouldn't expect any like high-end performances out of this offense this season. Next, we've got Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy's come out stating that he wants to return and play in week 1 with his hamstring injury, but that's just simply not going to happen. I would expect Jerry Jeudy to miss the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. Honestly, that's what we want if you're drafting Jerry Jeudy. You don't want him to rush back and re-aggravate that hamstring injury. That's always the concern with these soft tissue injuries, is that they could rush their way back and then find themselves in a spot where they re-aggravate it, similar to what we saw with Keenan Allen last season, sort of what we might have just seen with Cooper Kupp earlier here. And that we want to make sure that they take it easy with Jerry Jeudy, let him sit out the first couple weeks and come back when he's 100%. So I think that's totally okay. I think Jerry Jeudy can be a fine like 7th or 8th round draft pick at this point, not a 5th round draft pick anymore. This does make Marvin Mims and Courtland Sutton really great values for me on the draft boards. I like Courtland Sutton quite a bit. He's a guy that I think can actually put up like wide receiver 2 numbers over the first part of the season while Jerry Jeudy's out, and he's looked good in off season as well. If this offense takes a step forward, it could support 2 wide receivers, and Marvin Mims is a really great asset as well now. He's a perfect really late draft pick. He's going to show early on in the season whether or not he's got it, and he's got that deep threat ability. He's a guy that I think Russ is going to like quite a bit, and I think could have some really spike weeks this year. So that'll do it for the Everything You Guys Need to Know video. I hope you guys are as informed as possible going into your fantasy drafts and heading into week 1 of the NFL. So it's going to be super exciting. Tomorrow I'll be putting out a video where I just go over players that are trending up, and maybe I'll throw in players that are trending down as well into that video to sort of summarize big movers and fallers over the last like week or 2 of the offseason. And then on Wednesday I'll be doing the I Rate Your Teams video. I think there are like 20 submissions. I'll maybe just split it up into 2 videos, but gonna get all those done. It's gonna be a lot of fun sort of going through all your teams and seeing what you guys were able to do. So super excited for that. And then Thursday we've got NFL football. We're going to get the Chiefs and Lions. It's going to be super exciting. Super excited for the regular season to start. On Saturday, I'll be putting out my Starts of the Week video, so feel free to hit me up with any sort of start-sit questions you have. I'll be doing that every single week on Saturdays. So Saturday morning, they'll have that video go up, so you'll have all week throughout the course of the week to put start-sit questions in there, and I'll sort of try and answer as many as I can in that video as well. So going to be super fun, super excited for NFL football. I'm going to be here all season long to help you guys win your league, so if you guys want to make sure that you get more access to more videos as they come out, please do subscribe to the channel. It really helps with the algorithm. If you guys like the video as well, it really helps me know that I'm doing a good job. You can also click the notification bell so you get more notifications as videos come out. There will be a video every single day up until Thursday, and then once the regular season starts, like I said, we'll be moving to like a 3 or 4 video a week sort of schedule, so that just so that I'm not adding too much filler and all that. But yeah, with that, I want to thank you guys for watching so much, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.